In the world of video game remakes, there are hits and misses. Some companies clearly take better care to preserve the spirit of the original game being remade than others. One of those companies is Capcom. Capcom, if you didn't know, is one of the OG modern day game developers, and as such, they have a ton of game franchises under their belt. One of which is Resident Evil. Resident Evil is home to 9 mainline entries so far, and yes, that is with counting 0. Now, as you know, the Resident Evil franchise is no stranger to remakes and remasters. As of the time this video is made, the latest RE game to be remade is RE4. It's another one of their great remakes for sure, but with so many of them being so good, it begs the question, which one of them is the best remake? On the list, we have the original Resident Evil Remake for the GameCube and its various different HD versions, 2019's RE2 Remake, 2020's RE3 Remake, and now 2023's RE4 Remake. And if you're really crazy, you might argue that Zero is a remake of the N64 beta version. I'm not gonna do that here. To understand what the best remake is, we need to understand what a remake even is, and how it's fundamentally different from a remaster. A remaster is when you take the base game and optimize it for a newer generation of either gaming consoles or computers. Most often this meaning improving graphics and technical performance, with the goal of making that old game feel like it belongs on the new hardware. It's fundamentally the same game, but it looks and plays better. In some cases, you'll also see expansions such as DLC and other quality of life improvements make their way into a remaster of a game. Essentially, what was once the director's cut of the past is what some remasters are today. Similarly, some remasters don't really do a whole lot other than increase the resolution and make the game playable on newer hardware. Major examples being the various Kingdom Hearts remasters. So then, is it bad if a developer chooses to keep it simple and not add that many new things? No. Sometimes that's all that is needed, since the core product is so solid. However, the price of a remaster is certainly something to take into account. No matter how you slice it, an old game is an old game. The less stuff the remasters includes, the less expensive it should be. And that's on top of the fact that remasters should always be cheaper than full-on new games. Since today's standard for game prices is around 60 to 70 US dollars, the price of a remaster should be at most $30. So now that you know what a remaster is, what the heck is a remake? Well, the most simple and straightforward answer there is when a game is remade from the ground up, aka when you have to press new project instead of opening an old one. New engine, new models, new everything, and most importantly, the freedom to change and reimagine things in different ways. Whereas a remaster is the same base game at its core, remakes are free to change stuff however they want while still adhering to the spirit of the original game. And finally, with that out of the way, let's just have one more quick stop. If you enjoy this kind of video, consider subscribing today to join me here on this crazy ride. Let's look into what the best Resident Evil remake is. And a quick notice, this is my opinion, but I'll do my best to share why I think the way I do. For me, a remake shouldn't be afraid to try new things and expand upon the original game it's based on. That being said, it should not outright remove certain features and especially locations from the original game. As such, the so-called worst remake is definitely 2020's RE3 remake. It's here that I need to make it ultra clear. It's not bad. It just doesn't live up to the original RE3 to the fullest extent. Let's talk positives. The game greatly expands Jill's expressive nature to the environment and things happening around her. The gameplay falls in line with the modern superb feel of Resident Evil. The graphics are phenomenal and it even brought back music to the game, which was sorely missing in one of the other remakes on this list. The biggest issue with RE3 as you know, is that a lot of stuff was cut from the original game in order to speed up pacing. This works in theory, removing what might not be necessary to tell the full story of a game in order to get the game to be more fluid in a sense. But in my experience as a longtime RE fan, I was more often than not waiting to see how all the areas from the original would look in a remake. After the first real city area though, the game sorta stumbled a little. It all begins when you reach the sewers. The more open-end feel of the original game and the first city area, as I said, kinda just goes away. The whole area was over incredibly fast in comparison to what I was just playing, and then the follow-up section when Nemesis are running and shooting at you kinda just also feels like running through a hallway, which, to be fair, it was. The game sorta gets back on track nearing the end, I'd say. However, good as that is, we can't ignore the obvious missing part of the game, which is, of course, the clock tower. So while RE3 gets the story, gameplay, and atmosphere right, it does that by taking out and changing the feel of the original a little too much. Ultimately, not being worth the full price I paid at launch. At the risk of offending the entire gaming community right now, I have to say the shiny new RE4 remake is next on the list. Now hold on, lower the pitchforks. As a standalone RE game, the RE4 remake is extremely good. And as a matter of fact, I haven't even finished my first real hardcore playthrough yet, although I will very soon. Now look, the RE4 remake is, as I said, extremely good, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best remake of the bunch. As it stands, the RE4 remake is very safe. It's stepping all over the line between remaster and remake in my eyes. As someone who recently played through the original RE4, the similarities between that and the remake are very clear. There's not that many. This falls sorta in with what I talked about before, since the original RE4 was and is so solid. Even today, there wasn't that much that outright needed to be changed in their remake. More or less, the remake's biggest additions are quality of life improvements and graphical improvements. And depending on who you ask, it may or may not offer performance improvements in comparison to the original, since a lot of people, including myself, faced crashes in the demo and the game's official launch. All should be fine. Maybe. Let's hope for once everything doesn't crash on me. Luckily, I haven't crashed since that launch, which might indicate that me switching settings around worked. Or maybe Capcom made it so the game doesn't eat VRAM like crazy anymore. I don't know. Strictly speaking, the main game of the RE4 remake is very good, but feels almost too similar to the original. The addition of the bounties is a nice touch, but just the same, the cowhead dude enemy sucks so hard I wanna cry. He takes too many bullets to bring down for a bad player like me to deal with. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same RE4 we know and love, but much prettier and controlling far better. And that's honestly all I would want it to be. I'm not gonna pretend I know how I would make it different, since just making it different for the sake of being different is just as bad as removing stuff like RE3 did. My one real criticism to the game might just be the voice acting. Leon and Louise sound fine, right? But then you have Salazar and Sadler just sounding off, and Ada just being completely wrong.
Leon S. Kennedy. You haven't changed. You just think you have.
It's not a deal breaker or anything, and I can't understand people who go out of their way to harass the actors behind the roles. That's no cool. These next two are fan favorites, and it's easy to see why. Both were held as the golden standard for what a remake should be at the time of their individual release. That being said, the original Resident Evil Remake takes the number 2 spot. This was a very close call, but the decision mainly comes down to the same one as in RE4's case. It's leaning more to the safe side, which is totally fine given that this was the first remake. But to give credit where it's due, The RE remake adds much more new stuff to the main game than the RE4 remake did. Stunning new rooms in the Spencer Mansion, expanded and reimagined areas throughout the game. And of course, the addition of the Lisa Trevor backstory is a huge plus. All in all, the RE1 remake truly took everything in RE1 on the PS1 and improved upon it, making it the absolute definitive version to play of RE1. For me then, it's just a little too safe to take the number 1 spot. Once again, this is almost too similar to the original PS1 game in certain aspects, and as such, I can't give it the perfect remake title. So no surprise really, but drum roll please. Operation Raccoon City. The RE2 remake is out of this world. Like I said, it was hard to decide between the number 1 and 2, but ultimately the RE2 remake takes just about everything from the original RE2 and uses it in a familiar yet new way. No matter how well you know the original game, the remake still will manage to surprise and spook you with the phenomenal atmosphere, locations, and immersive nature, taking the beloved structure and story from the original and modernizing it, with the oh-so-loved over-the-shoulder control, as well as adding new areas like the orphanage, truly makes this game feel like what the original vision was for the original game. It boils down to the fact that this is pretty much the original game, but at the same time not, perfectly utilizing the strengths of a remake to the fullest degree. Everything old is new again, or so they say. The one thing keeping RE2 Remake from being an all-around perfect game for me is the absolute lack of a soundtrack. Sure, every now and then an old song pops up, but the whole game is for the most part ambience. But even this is a small complaint since with DLC, the original soundtrack got added back in. It's kinda ironic though that the RE3 remake had a soundtrack, but stumbled on everything else. Had the RE3 remake been more like the RE2 remake, it would have easily overtaken the already excellent RE4 remake. Alas, we still got 4 amazing remakes on our hands. And while I decided to rank them like this, each and every single one of them is worth getting your hands on. And with that, I feel like I've said the word remake so many times that at least someone must be mad about it. Agree or disagree with my points? Let me know in the comments what you thought about this topic. Thanks a bunch for sticking around to the end of this video. If you could, leave a like and help spread my videos over YouTube. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys later.